Hello everyone, welcome to CNA, the daily newspaper analysis. So today we are back with the following bunch of topics to discuss. But before starting, I just want to convey you a message that we are on with the festive season. So to get some of the latest updates related to our courses, programs, as well as to get some of the free study materials, do join our WhatsApp group as well as the Telegram channel by the link given below in the comment section. So do join these channels so as to make some of the progress in your respective preparations. So now let's start with today's analysis. So the first topic says about the burning of fossil fuels. So today we know about that the the burning of fossil fuels is leading us with various number of environmental pollution as well as degradation. Okay, and recently a report was released which was known as the Lancet Countdown on Health and Climate Change, that is health at the mercy of fossil fuels. This report is prepared by the efforts of around 99 experts from 51 institutions, which includes even the World Health Organization as well as the World Meteorological Organization. So the reports has presented about 43 indicators that include some of the new and advanced metrics that monitor the impact of extreme temperatures on food insecurity, household air pollution, and the alignment of the fossil fuel industry with a healthy future. So now there's reports. You can see that since we are using more and more composition of this respective fossil fuels, so now it is high time that we have to concentrate much more towards the climate change. Okay, but this report suddenly said about every other aspects related to climate change. It may be food insecurity, it may be heat waves, it may be drought, which directly is a threat to the crop yields, etc. Okay, so therefore today we see that according to this report, around 3,30,000 people lost their lives in India on account of exposure to particulate matter from fossil fuel combustion in around 2020. And the report further says that the heat related deaths rose by around 55% in India. And from 2012 to 2021, the infants that are under 1 year experience an average of 72 million more persons day of heat waves per year compared to the time period of 1985 to 2005. Okay, so therefore today we see that this Lancet report published ahead of the UN conference of the parties, that is the COP27, which will be recently taking place. So it shows that as countries across the world continue to tackle the health, social, and economical impacts of the COVID pandemic, Ukraine war, and the global energy and the cost of living crisis, the climate change has aggravated these impacts. And a transition to clean energy is very much imperative today to mitigate the further climate change related adversities and improving the energy security. ठीक है, तो ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है आज के डेट पे, जहां पे due to fossil fuels, due to the burning of the fossil fuels, we are directly losing more and more number of lives, and this is directly caused a burden on the India's economy. So India needs to focus much more towards this so as to experience less deaths and less impact of climate change. Okay, तो ये था about this burning of fossil fuels. Next आते हैं cyclone Sitrang. So recently we know about the IMD officials said the cyclonic storm set to develop in an east central Bay of Bengal, which reached close to the coast of West Bengal, Bangladesh. Okay, and the name Sitrang has been given by Thailand. Okay, तो आज अगर मैं यहाँ पे बोलूँ about the tropical cyclones कि what are these tropical cyclones, because Sitrang is considered amongst the tropical cyclones. So these cyclones are violent storms that originate over oceans in tropical areas and move over to coastal areas, bringing about large scale destruction caused by violent winds, very heavy rainfall, and storm surges. And these are low pressure weather systems in which winds equal or exceed speeds of around 62 km/h. And here the winds circulate around in anti-clockwise direction in the northern hemisphere and in clockwise direction in the southern hemisphere. तो हम लोग क्या रिसीव करेंगे? Obviously the anti-clockwise direction. So the tropical refers to the geographical origins of the system, which forms almost exclusively over the tropical seas. So now the cyclone is directly referred to as the winds moving in a circle, whirling round their central, clear eye with their winds blowing counterclockwise in the northern hemisphere, and what I have told that in a clockwise direction in the southern hemisphere. And the opposite direction of the circulation is due to the Coriolis effect. So now if I see about the tropical cyclones in our country, So tropical cyclones striking India generally originate in the eastern side of India because Bay of Bengal is more prone to cyclone than Arabian Sea because it gets high sea surface temperature, low vertical shear winds, and has enough moisture in the middle layer of its atmosphere. So the frequency of cyclones in this region is very much bimodal. That is, cyclones occur in the months of May, June, and October and November. So now, if I see about the formation of the cyclones, we know that tropical cyclones typically form over large bodies of relatively warm water. Okay, so warm water, evaporation, rising up, and lastly, the low pressure area is created. So therefore, we could see that these tropical cyclones, which are very prominent in these areas, so depending on its location and strength, a tropical cyclone is referred to by different names. तो हम लोग जानते हैं इंडियन ओशन में इसको साइक्लोन्स बोलते हैं, अटलांटिक ओशन में इसको हरिकेन्स बोलते हैं, वेस्टर्न पैसिफिक और साउथ चाइना सी के अराउंड इसको टाइफून्स बोलते हैं, और वेस्टर्न ऑस्ट्रेलिया के अराउंड इसको हम लोग विली विली बोलते हैं. ठीक है. So therefore the main ingredient of this cyclones are the eye wall as well as the rain bands, because we see that when such number of storm is directly created, the relatively closer areas receives a huge amount of rainfall जो हम लोग यहाँ पे in the northeast हम लोग मिले थे. Just we can see the last 2 to 3 days which is continuously raining. Okay, so therefore today we have got the cyclone management team in India who is working for rehabilitating every forms of effect related to these cyclones. Okay, Indian Meteorological Department is a nodal agency for the early warning of the cyclones and the floods. Okay, so we could see about the all other organizations constantly working for the retrieval of such number of cyclonic disaster. Okay, so stay safe and do follow the IMD declarations. Okay, chalo next पे आते हैं. India's export to China. So now we can see about that recently, according to the reports, India's trade relations with China have been improving in recent years, with outbound exports to China growing faster than imports. So the growth in imports is mainly fueled by the imports of key raw materials and to meet demand from the high growth sectors such as telecom and power. We know about that China is one of the India's largest trading partners, with trade relations growing about 59% from around $72 billion in financial year 15 to around $115.4 billion in around financial year 22. And further, India's exports to China have increased by about 78.1%. So, but the imports from China are recorded around 94.6 billion, which has increased by around 55.8%. So additionally, if you see about some of the intermediate goods accounts for around 33% of the India's import from China, the key items of import from China are basically what? Electronic components, computer hardware, telecom equipments, organic chemicals, okay, then industrial machinery, electronic instruments, some of the bulk drugs, and some of the intermediates. So now if you see about the things associated with China, we know that India is very much dependent on China for some of its products. Okay, लेकिन आज हम लोग का यहाँ पे जो एक्सपोर्ट सिस्टम है विथ रेस्पेक्टिव टू द कंट्री लाइक इंडिया चाइना, जो यहाँ पे हम लोग ट्रेड डेफिसिट फेस कर रहे हैं, तो ये हम लोग बहुत ज्यादा रिकवर कर रहे हैं, बिकॉज टुडे वी आर एक्सपोर्टिंग अ मोर एंड मोर नंबर ऑफ रॉ मटेरियल्स टू चाइना एज कंपेयर टू द इंपोर्ट्स दैट वी आर डायरेक्टली प्रोक्योरिंग फ्रॉम चाइना. ठीक है, तो इसीलिए हम लोग का यहाँ पे थोड़ा बहुत अभी इकोनॉमिक रेशियो थोड़ा कम हुआ है. ठीक है, नेक्स्ट पे आते हैं. Ethiopia, its past and current challenges. So we know all about Ethiopia. Okay, this is the great location of Ethiopia. It's directly in the region of Horn of Africa. Okay, so we know about the problem that has emerged in this area that is known as Ethiopia. See, the Ethiopian Prime Minister during the time period of around 2020s only, he voted to continue the military operation in the Tigray region amid concern it could descend into civil conflict. Tigray region कौन सा है? Tigray region इस एरिया को बोलते हैं. Okay, that is the northern area or the north side area of Ethiopia. ठीक है, इस Tigray region में क्या हुआ है? He has declared, that is the respective Prime Minister of Ethiopia has declared war on the country's Tigray region, which is ruled by the powerful Tigray People's Liberation Front, and in response to its attack on a federal military base in Tigray. So after becoming the Prime Minister in 2018, this man, that is Abiy Ahmed, reached out to the political opposition, ushering some of the democratic reforms, lifting curbs on the media, and made peace with Eritrea, moves that won him the Nobel Peace Prize in 2019. Okay, so today you see that this TPLF, that is the Tigray People's Liberation Front, it is a militia turned party which was part of the coalition that brought an end to the military dictatorship in 1991. सो यहाँ पे जो टीपीएलएफ के लीडर थे, मैलिस जेनेवी, he took over as an interim president in 1991 and became the first elected prime minister around in 1995. So he is largely seen as the architect of the country's ethno-federal system, but it has played a dominant role in the country's ruling coalition. So today, if you see about the stand of the prime minister, he is very much aimed at addressing the historic power imbalance in the country and making peace with the neighbors. So now this TPLF, which is firing some of the rockets into Eritrea from Tigray, threatening the wider regional war in the Horn of Africa. तो आज अगर मैं हॉर्न ऑफ अफ्रीका के बारे में बोलूं तो इसमें कौन सा कंट्रीज आएंगे? यहाँ पे आएंगे जिबूती, यहाँ देख सकते हो, यहाँ पे जिबूती आएंगे, ठीक है, यहाँ पे एरिट्रिया आएंगे, यहाँ पे इथियोपिया आएंगे एंड यहाँ पे सोमालिया आते हैं. सो दिस आर द 4 countries which is considered amongst this horn of Africa. ठीक है. So now we know about that since this region of Tigray directly shares a border with Sudan, the TPLF enjoyed some of the good relations with Sudan, its respective dictator who is Omar Bashir. So now we know that ये जो यहाँ पे प्रॉब्लम चल रहा है, ठीक है, about some of the atrocities that has been done with respective to this region of this Tigray. So we know that Ethiopia is one of the largest, because we know that Ethiopia is one of the largest recipient of the long-term concessional credit from India in Africa. So today, the tele-education, telemedicine services under the Pan-E-Network project, Pan-African Network project, is basically focused towards this region of Ethiopia. So today, if I see about some of the bilateral trade between Ethiopia and India, it stood for around 1.28 billion. So ये और बढ़ेगा. And there are around more than 586 companies in Ethiopia today, employing more than 55,000 people with license investments of around $4 billion. Also, Indian mission at Ethiopia has been celebrating the International Day of Yoga in Addis Ababa, and the mission held Gandhi at 150 celebration in Addis Ababa. So today, if you see about the protection of the civilian safety and security is very essential, and we can see about that African Union can play an essential role in managing such number of conditions that is happening in Ethiopia. तो आज अगर इस liberation organization को, which is known as the TPLF, okay, जो मैंने अभी भी बोला है about the Tigray People's Liberation Front. So they basically want some of the removal of this man, that is Abiy Ahmed, which is basically attacking them with all such number of resources that is basically of the state. ठीक है. तो अभी यहाँ पे जो issue चल रहा है, तो this issue we can say about the current challenges that is getting faced. Okay, because यहाँ पे जो Ethiopia है, it is directly starving just because of this Tigray. तो यहाँ पे ये सब बोला गया है. ठीक है. So we have seen about, see यहाँ पे ethnic groups जो ओरोमो है वो सबसे ज्यादा है, फिर अम्हारा है, सोमाली है, then this Tigrayan, which is around 6.1%. Okay, तो यहाँ पे we could see about that because of such number of differences we can see. So this region is basically focused much more towards the other regions as compared to the region of Tigray, which is very much powerful in the northern side of Ethiopia. ठीक है. तो आज इंडिया का प्रेजेंस है, उल्टा यहाँ पे चाइनीज का प्रेजेंस भी बढ़ रहा है, एंड बिकॉज ऑफ द चाइनीज प्रेजेंस वी कैन सी एवरी अदर इन्वेस्टमेंट ऑफ चाइनीज इज डायरेक्टली ग्रोइंग इन दिस एरिया. ओके, और ये एक warning sign है for the people of Ethiopia where the Chinese investments are directly put into. ठीक है. तो ये था about this relations. We can see about the next topic saying about Rishi Sunak being the prime minister. So we all know the Indian origin non-white prime minister, 42-year-old. He directly was succeeded PM Liz Truss after her resignation. So today we know that as this man Rishi Sunak becomes the first Indian origin prime minister of India, India's bilateral relations with the UK is expected to witness increased two-way exchanges. We know that Rishi Sunak's vision for India-UK bilateral ties has gone beyond the opportunity for the UK to sell things in India, but also wants Britain to learn from India. So this Rishi Sunak had earlier said that there exists an enormous amount of opportunity in India, and he wants to make it easier for the people in UK to go to India and to study at world-class institutions or to work in some of the emerging startups in India. So he also talked about some of the British companies working together with Indian companies in a two-way relationship model. So आने वाले time में we could see about that the relations between India and UK will grow to a much larger extent just because of this respective man. Okay, because he traces his origin towards this country of India. ठीक है. चलो नेक्स्ट पे आते हैं. लास्टली एन एडिटोरियल. तो यहाँ पे बोला गया है अबाउट द बैटिंग चेंजेस एन अमेरिकन ड्रीम mainly focus on these three countries, Iran, Russia, and China. So we know about the US-Iran relations. तो अगर मैं टाइमलाइन बोलूं अबाउट दिस यूएस ईरान रिलेशंस, तो ये शुरू हुआ था 1883 में. Okay, and then we can see about some number of activities that is directly going on between US and Iran. So later around, if I say about the modern period around 1967, so we see that US offered Iran a nuclear reactor and weapons grade nuclear fuel in around in 1967. But during a revolution in Iran, the government backed by the CIA was overthrown, and the US embassy in Tehran is overtaken, and staff were held hostage for more than a year, leading to diplomatic crisis between the two countries. So during that period of time, we could see about US President Jimmy Carter ordered to cut off every diplomatic ties with Iran and authorizes a rescue mission to get the American hostages out in 1980. So, but Iran releases these hostages minutes after Ronald Reagan's inauguration in 1981, and US President Reagan, in his second term, admits to a secret arm deal with Iran, and it became a huge scandal known as Iran Contra affair. So once again, the diplomatic crisis erupted in 1988 when a US Navy ship was shot down an Iranian passenger plane, killing 290 people who were on board. So with complete diplomatic closure existed between these two countries over the past 15 years, US President George W. Bush names Iran as a part of an axis of evil along with North Korea and Iraq. But US President George W. Bush pushes for talks with Iran regarding nuclear deal. So the deal never moves forward as the new US President Barack Obama falls silently and stays away from the negotiation. So Obama government enforces a new law that put the skews on Iran in financial sector. And a lot of countries followed US to cut back on buying Iranian oil. And now we can see about the Iranian economy taking a big hit. So the following year, Hassan Rouhani was elected the president in US and US-Iran nuclear deal was signed. But US President Donald Trump pulled out US from the deal in 2018 and get ready to impose sanctions over its nuclear program and claims the country is supporting military groups in the crisis. So therefore, ये जब से हुआ है, तब से क्या हुआ है? We know about the conditions that have happened between US and Iran. So आज US Iran एक कट्टर दुश्मन है, just because of the failure of this joint cooperation plan of agreement, that is the JCPOA. Okay, US Iran deal failure हुआ था. तो यहाँ पे इसलिए यूएस ईरान को थोड़ा भी पसंद नहीं करता है. Also, if you see about countries like US China, though they shared a sore relationship in the 1950s, the countries were confronting each other in the Korean War in the early 1950s. However, with the growing differences with Russia and the fear of the two countries' global domination in 1960s and 70s, it induced to engage more with the US. And as a mark of loyalty towards the US, the Chinese government did not renew the security treaty with Russia in 1980. And China took the support of US and strengthened the economic power that eventually helped it to become a future global region. So despite this, China and US don't share a cordial relationship in the current scenario. तो इसके ऊपर मैं अगर यूएस रशिया के थोड़े बारे में बात बोलूं, they were allies in 1940s and defeated the Axis powers in the World War II. So they laid the foundation of the Yalta system on which the current world order rests. However, in the late 1940s, a Cold War emerged between the two based on ideological confrontations. So capitalism versus communism. And the ray of hope was witnessed in the 1960s when the two agreed to lay foundation for nuclear arms control. But they also agreed to develop a new framework for select global leaderships. So nonetheless, the relationship has been confrontational in nature after the disintegration of the Soviet Union in 1991. तो ये था अबाउट द हिस्ट्री विच यू कैन सी अबाउट दिस टू नेशंस. लेकिन धीरे धीरे करके टुडे वी सी दैट यहाँ पे इंडिया का जो एक फैक्टर्स आते हैं. सी इंडिया with this strange relationship of US with all these other countries. Okay, so how this US China, US Russia rivalry will impact India? See, the relocation of companies is a much big, because US tariffs are likely to induce foreign invested companies to relocate from China. तो आज अगर तो रिसेंट इंडिया का हम लोग का जो मेक इन इंडिया इनिशिएटिव्स है, इसको बूस्ट मिलेगा किसके तरफ? जब ये कंपनीज रिलोकेट होकर चाइना रशिया से इंडिया आए. Also reduce capital flows. Due to this China-US rivalry, economies will go for protectionist measures that will impact the overall capital flows. Also, there is an opportunity for India about this rivalry, because India can become more competitive in segments such as textiles, garments, and gems and jewelries, since India already has an edge. Also, the rupee will be weakened more due to decreased capital flows, and this will make imports costly, but would help Indian exports, which will become cheaper. So now, if I say about the economic growth, so the current global economic order will be dismantled, and thus could impact India's exports and imports, impacting its economic growth, also leading to inflation. Also, यहाँ पे Indian share market will go down, as seen recently through drop in stock markets due to cautious approach of the investors. तो ये होंगे तो ऑब्वियसली द फ्लो ऑफ फॉरेन इन्वेस्टमेंट में रिड्यूस. सो नाउ इंडिया शुड अप्रोच यूएस विथ इट्स रिलेशन ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ चाइना और रशिया. तो यहाँ पे एक इंडिपेंडेंट अप्रोच इंडिया को अपनाना पड़ेगा. India needs to go forward with each and every country in a holistic, in a very comprehensive way, so that the effects being the major nations should not directly tackle them. So India is a major emerging power in the world today. With the present US-China, US-Russia, US-Iran rivalry, it should not miss an opportunity to further its Make in India concept. Okay. So now, if I see about the initiative and an emerge as an export hub, so what is needed is a proper policy push and reforms in some of the Indian market system so that India could grow economically from being the sixth largest, from being the fifth largest to some of the at least third largest economy by around 2025. ठीक है, क्योंकि 2025 तक हम लोग का ये भी एम है कि वी विल बिकम अ $5 trillion इकोनॉमी. ठीक है, तो ये हम लोग को करना है विद दिस रेस्पेक्टिव एलिमेंट ऑफ द rivalry that has happening between US, Iran, Russia and China. Okay, तो यहाँ पे इंडिया को एक बड़ा सा लीप लेना पड़ेगा with its policies so that it could move forward with some of the independent foreign policies with respective to these nations. ठीक है, तो ये था about the analysis. So we have got this 5 number of questions. So please attempt these questions and you will get the answers in tomorrow's PDF. We have got one mains question. Do attempt these questions and send it to us in the WhatsApp as well as in the Telegram channel. Do join this Telegram channel from the link given below. So that's all for today. Thank you and Jai Hind.